Hello, everyone, and thank you for the birthday wishes. This is the Truth About Real Estate Investing show, and I'm a lot older than I look. Honestly, I'd look younger if I wasn't a real estate investor and a business owner in the real estate investing world. Uh, Even though it's been quite profitable, it's not always the easiest to be on an Ontario landlord with long-term tenants. I honestly just got an email from one of my tenants. She knows I want to sell the property, and she just extorted me, even though we have a wonderful relationship. She just asked me for 6 months rent and moving costs. Lovely way to start Monday. So again, thank you everyone for the birthday wishes. I turned 45 over the weekend, so if I live to 90, I'm either half alive or I'm half. You know what? This is honestly the thought I had when I woke up on my birthday. To celebrate, Cherry, my wife, and real estate accountant organized an escape room and dinner for a small group of my friends and family. I planned the after event for drinks and indoor golf, two of my favorite things. As a special birthday present, we escaped the escape room without hints. And at this particular venue, which we've been to at least 15 times, this is the first time we successfully escaped in our career. We had a whole 60 seconds before the clock expired, so we were super amped. This was one of those fancy, this new age of escape rooms, like the higher end ones. This was a 2-hour escape room, so it's a bit more expensive, and it had two parts. The first part was to escape the room, and then the second part of this Western themed escape room was a bank robbery. We were divided into two groups, and we're competing against each other and against the clock to see who could steal more, quote unquote, steal more from during the bank robbery. My friend Andrew Kim, CEO of Share, the U.S. real estate asset manager, he was on my team by chance, and him and I were tackling we were tackling the main problem, which was to crack the main safe, which contained a gun, not a real one, as it was important strategically, as there first of all there was only one. We were competing with the other team to crack the safe as well, and that gun was worth the most points. So basically, whoever got the gun would mainly determine who would win. Andrew and I solved a poker hand style puzzle, and we did it with seconds before the game ended. Like as soon as we opened the safe, we had the gun in our hands, and the lights shut off because the signaled the game was over, and so our team won the challenge as well. So double win. We escaped the escape room. We are now an elite. I'll have pictures. We are now an elite escape room artist. I don't know what the term is, but we won the challenge. Everyone had a total blast. Dinner was fantastic. As my dad collects wines, and so he brought some fancy wines as it was my birthday, and he always does this basically. And it was paired with a variety of seafood and steak. Our guests loved it. This is how I usually have family dinners with my family, especially my dad's side and Cherry's uncle's side. But this is foreign to my friends not from Markham and don't eat Chinese and seafood as much. But yeah, everyone had a great time. We finished the night again after dinner. A bunch of us and I invited some other friends to go play indoor golf, which is one of my favorite things to do, over a handful of adult beverages. It was a great birthday. Several of my real estate buddies came along too, so we got to talk about my favorite subject, which is of course real estate investing. And who says you can't mix business and pleasure? A lot of my friends are in the real estate industry. And it just makes, to me, it makes conversation a lot more interesting. I can only talk so much about how much the Leafs suck. Sometimes they're good. On to this week's show. This week, we have a very special guest in Patrick Francey, CEO of the Real Estate Investment Network. And it's REIN for short, REIN, like rain as in like reindeer, REIN. What makes REIN special in my experience is they've always been affordable. REIN has been around longer than pretty much any other real estate education organization or networking group. They focus on economic fundamentals and cash flow, being positive cash flow, because cash flow is what reduces your risk. They literally teach both of these subjects, economic fundamentals and cash flow, over a 3-day workshop. They spend a lot of time on these subjects extensively. They do it once per year in every city they operate. So that's like Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Toronto. As such, their members are among the most successful investors in the community, and especially when you adjust for risk. REIN members simply take on less risk than what I see that's out there. Never have they taught high leverage investing or promissory notes in my experience. Generally, again, everything was more investing for the long term. OPM or joint venturing instruction was almost entirely equity based to preserve cash flow, which reduces your risk. So, not having interest payments each month, that reduces your risks and allows the investment partner to participate in both upside and downside. But for anyone who's followed the market, generally it's been a lot of upside. On the other hand, I'm having conversations with investors about professional coaches and small REIT owners who are behind on payments to their investors, and folks are lawyering up. I literally speak to lawyers every week or two, and yes, they're all busy. Busier than ever with litigious requests. Never in my experience have I seen such scale of lawsuits. Hence, the timing of the interview with Patrick this week and last week, Tom Karadza of Rockstar Real Estate is timely because these two guys run two of the most successful organizations in terms of successful members. We've had lots of experts on the show, including Alberta real estate investors, but I do want to highlight what makes today's guest and Patrick Francey stand out. Patrick's role as REIN places him at the forefront of research and education. He has thousands of REIN members, current and past and present, to network with across the country to help him make informed and profitable decisions. Patrick admits he's a wee older than I am and benefits from having been through both as a business owner and real estate investor. He's been through several economic cycles, both boom and bust. On today's show, we reminisce about what has made REIN members successful over the decades, but it's been far from perfect. This is the Truth About Real Estate Investing show. We are talking about Alberta here, who's been in an economic winter previous to COVID. Basically, they were in an economic winter for like a decade. Prices had crashed. The energy sector still is being neglected by our federal government. But as for the future for Alberta, it's bright for specific parts and strategies in Alberta. So you want to pay attention. If you're interested in Alberta, you want to pay attention to what CEO of REIN Patrick has to say about that. So you can follow up Patrick if you're interested. The website is REIN Canada, REIN Canada.com, or the email is info@reincanada.com. Please enjoy the show. Hello, Patrick. What's keeping you busy these days?
What's keeping me busy? Well, right now, what's keeping me busy is the podcast, but always what's keeping me busy is the research that I do around real estate, what's going on economically. I spend a lot of time doing that. I work with the team to get data, find data. As you know, in Canada, it's hard to find that data. It's getting harder, not easier, by the way. And that's where I spend a lot of my time, looking after the REIN community and looking after my other businesses.
For those who don't know, tell us about REIN.
Well, what is REIN? REIN is the Real Estate Investment Network. We've been around 30 plus years, and really based on the fact that what we're trying to and always are doing is giving investors the insights to make decisions. So supporting people in creating a financial future by investing in real estate the right way, based on the economic fundamentals, a system, a process, and ongoing education given what's happening economically.
That's a mouthful.
It is.
You are the CEO, and then tell us about what is again. There's a lot of people who don't know what REIN is. So REIN is nationwide.
Yeah, I mean, we're a national organization. We've been the only national organization and the longest standing organization, through those 30 years, back when Don R. Campbell was, even before he wrote his books, when I became a member and started investing in real estate, when I was a member of the REIN community, it was back in 1999, 2000, when I started investing in real estate and came across the Real Estate Investment Network. So we are national, but in those days, of course, we were traveling back and forth across the country: Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, Ottawa. And so it was really national in the scope. I guess, when COVID hit, we were already kind of digital based. We had an international team that we were working with. So when COVID hit and everything got locked down, we became global. And I think that's a statement that many can make. But having said that, REIN had the community, which is national, which is speaking to the different regions of Canada, and we still do that. And but like I say, the difference is now we are global in reach. We often have people from around the world that want to listen, because ultimately what we teach, Erwin, as you know, is the fundamentals and the education of how to invest in real estate, but it's a system, it's a process. Everything from treat your real estate investing like a business to making decisions based on the economic fundamentals, the real estate cycle, the
Mhm.
influencers, all of that's quite systematic.
Now we were talking before recording about how a certain portfolio was not treated properly as a portfolio as a business. Uh, the number that was reported in the news was there was over 200 units vacant in a 600 unit portfolio, so nearly a third.
Yeah.
What would you say about that?
Well, sadly, we go back to what we teach, of course, is treat your real estate investing like a business. And as you indicated, and we talked briefly about before the show, is that, when you've got a portfolio with a couple of hundred empty doors, what are you thinking about? Through a real estate boom, everybody's a genius. Everybody's a real estate genius. And you can count on that appreciation and going to the bank and getting financing and refinancing and doing all the games that you can do and playing all those games in a boom cycle. But the thing about boom cycles is they come to an end. And when that boom cycle ends, guess what? It's like when the music stops, you're
Mhm.
left without a chair. And that's exactly what's happened. And in that case, it was no problem because you had lots of cash flow that was being driven by financing. And when that financing dries up and you don't have tenants in those units paying, well, ultimately what happens is liquidity crisis occurs and you got no capital to pay those mortgages. You've got no tenants to pay you rent. And the next
Mhm.
thing you know, it all implodes. You can get away with that. There's a lot of room for error in a boom cycle. But as soon as that boom cycle ends, and in this case, the bank, increases interest rates and they do it at a record pace and a record amount, you're caught. And the music stopped. And guess what? There was a whole bunch of people that were looking
Mhm.
for chairs, and there
Mhm.
were no chairs.
So I've been around for a while. I joined REIN back in 2008. I was a member for over 10 years.
Mhm.
And one thing that was unique about REIN was, well, when I joined, there was, I think, 600 members in Ontario, which is
Mhm.
a very large group.
Mhm.
There was well over 300 people in the room.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that was uh, people were kind. But again, we're talking about back in '08. So, and then as my career grew in the community, I was around a lot of people who've been around for a long time. And where I see a lot of these newer clubs, how they're having challenges is they don't have long time investors in the room. So there's no one really teaching what happens through a cycle. And I'll even add to that, like at REIN, it was taught regularly. Like if you're looking for how to qualify a partner, right? Who is a real estate expert? Minimum, they've gone through a cycle,
Yeah.
right? Versus we have all these new investors, like the group with almost a third of their portfolio is vacant. As far as I can tell, they started around like 2017 ish, right? So they hadn't been through a cycle. They didn't know that things can go really bad, right? Like 2008, 2007, 2008 was credit crisis. There were no mortgages,
Yeah.
right? Unless you were bulletproof, right? Could you get a mortgage?
Yeah.
Apartment buildings still get mortgages, but these guys were operating in smaller residential. So I guess they didn't factor in like you can't refi in a bad mortgage environment.
Well, you can't, they didn't factor it in. I think you make a good point, which is that if you haven't been through these cycles, I mean, there's a part of what I come from in the real estate world is that I've been in business 40 years. I've been a business owner for 40 years. As a matter of fact, one of the businesses that I still own to this day is 41 years old to be precise. And I own other businesses that just through the experience of going through business in general,
Mm-hmm,
you start to understand what it means to, be illiquid, what it means to have a downturn in a market
mm-hmm,
and a shift. And are you prepared for that? Because you always have to anticipate it. I'll give you a good example to your point is that our agenda is always that we're unbiased. We're not trying to sell a piece of real estate. So we're looking at it from what is really important to somebody who's going to buy real estate, not here's a system to buy real estate. And oh, by the way, we just happen to have a perfect project for you to invest in. So
Yeah.
our intention is different. So our intention is here, let us teach how to invest in real estate following a proven system, having that process, having the checklist, if you will. We often compared it to if you get on an airplane, we've all been on there, look through the door, and there they are going through their checklist. And you really are happy that they're going through that checklist.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
100 items or whatever it is they're checking off.
yeah,
Must
yeah,
be maybe boring for them, but they don't miss a step. And for us,
yeah.
that's really important. In the world of real estate, if you are actually paying attention to the process, to the system, you're going through that checklist. You know, we use the REIN Property Gold Mine Scorecard, talk about the long-term success formula. What is GDP? What is population growth? What is unemployment? You know, what is rental demand? These are all systematic ways of looking at real estate. But if you have an agenda called a project, oh, this project's awesome. And the rest of it just kind of falls away. So there's a fundamental challenge. So from my perspective, I look at it from a business point of view. I've always been very conservative in my own investing, although some would look at it and think it's pretty risky, some of the things I do. And if you look at some of my losses, you'd go, yeah, that was maybe a risky move in hindsight, right? But I also get a little bit comfortable with that. So my point around all of it is this, is that over the years and the evolution is that we do have the, I guess, the luxury, if that's the right word, of having a long-term view. We've been through a lot of things, so we are quite conservative. So back to the example, you know, is late 2020, early 2021, that within the REIN community, and for those members that are watching, and hopefully you would remember, I said very, very clearly on more than one occasion. As a matter of fact, it got to be a little bit like beating a drum, a little nauseum, if you will, is like, quit saying it, but I needed to keep saying it. This is not the time to be over leveraged. This is not the time to max on, you know, getting loans. Think about liquidity. Do you have access to a line of credit that if you need it, you have access to it? Don't use it. It's not, that's what it's there for. It's emergency only. More importantly, build up some cash reserves. So that was because of the uncertainty. And again, I'm pretty conservative when it comes to that. And I look at the world through a different world. So it's like through a different filter. So for me, knowing what was going on, seeing what was going on, not having clarity, given that the Bank of Canada didn't have any clarity, given that our government is just off the frickin' rails, like I can't even describe what was going on there. I said, yeah, it's just time to just settle down a little bit. We could see that this cycle was going to come to an end.
You
A
mentioned
lot of
your
that, by the
businesses.
way, and Erwin, a lot of that, when you know a boom cycle is coming to an end, when you start to literally, it's a joke, but it's like, you know, the guy on the elevator that, you know, back in those days, it was the guy running the elevator was telling you, giving you stock picks, right?
Yeah,
And that's really what was happening
yeah,
back then. Everybody was chasing deals, chasing
yeah,
deals, chasing deals. And I'm going to just say one thing that is, and you'll get this. We're investors. If you're investing and treating it like a business, you're looking for cash flow. You're looking to be able to negotiate a deal. You don't chase deals. You get in front of them, and you get in front of where real estate is going, not where it is or not where it's been. My point is this, is that if you are really looking at those deals and you start to understand that where this cycle is that everybody is just throwing at it. They're chasing it, but it's retail buyers that are driving the headlines. First time home buyers, next time home buyers. That's who the headlines are talking to. And that's what the hype is all about. And in behind that, the investors get caught up in it, and then they lose perspective of what are they really trying to do? ROI, quit chasing the money. Your brother-in-law is not getting rich until he sells. Oh, guess what? Your rich brother-in-law not so rich anymore because he couldn't flip that deal. That assignment didn't work. So these are all things that, and this isn't all hindsight, by the way. I mean, we were making these calls a couple of years ago.
yeah. Well, back in 2008, because it was always, what is your plan B? What is your plan
Yes,
C? What is your
totally.
plan D? Right.
Yes.
Versus like, there's all this like, I'll pick on Airbnb for a second. Like some people
Yeah.
just go into a project, property, whatever, Airbnb, and that's it. They have no plan B. If it
No
fails,
plan
as
B.
in like,
Yeah.
not necessarily fail, like say the condo board to change their mind, no longer allowed. Now
Yeah.
what?
And
right?
now what?
Yeah. Now your negative cash flow, 800,000 bucks a month as a long-term rental. Like, are you okay with this? If you're
Yeah.
okay with it, sure. Like, I think most people wouldn't be okay with it. Right. But
And,
again, like
and
people went into things with no plan.
yeah, and condo board aside, I mean, now it's, provincial governments and municipal governments going,
Federal
no more
too.
Airbnb. Whoa.
Everybody. I actually joke with people like, who's hated more, the landlord or the Airbnb operator?
No.
Just the fact that we're
There's-
having that conversation is just terrible.
Yeah.
So Patrick, I remember I messaged you about it as well when I did it was because I'm looking at new markets in the States, and I took a PDF copy of the REIN Goldmine scorecard, and
Yeah.
I stuck it in the ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And then my prompt was, find me the top 10 best cities according to these criteria.
Yeah. Love it.
Oh, did you ever think that would happen? No
Wherever
one
it comes to,
checking.
right? I love ChatGPT. I subscribe. I'm all in. I love it.
Yeah. So I thought it was hilarious because again, like, all these people are questioning my decision making. Like, I'm gonna have to like the AI is telling me where to invest based on these criteria that have made me a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right? I think so. I don't talk about it a lot, but like I was in Hamilton because REIN had picked Hamilton, not immediately, but it was as long as as long as I was a REIN member and tracked Hamilton, it was always a top 10 town.
Yeah.
Eventually reaching number one in Ontario,
Yeah.
and a lot of people have made a lot of money in Hamilton.
They did. I mean, we were doing bus trips to Hamilton. I mean,
Yeah,
we were
yeah,
doing
yeah. I
trips. You
remember.
guys, yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
remember.
No, it was cool stuff back then.
Yeah, and yeah, just but
Well, the
yeah,
good
now
news around all of this is right, is that, as much as it's real estate investing in Canada and we've digitized it and we've done all the things that we've done in real estate investing in Canada, the thing about it is the name is a little misleading because the system and the process works in any first world country. Like,
yes.
and you literally, found that out by taking that gold mine scorecard and go, okay, well, based on this, if I put that into this technology called AI and let them do the work for me, what does it come
Mhm.
back with? And you ended up exactly where people are ending up.
Yeah. And then it's just a faster way to search as well because like it has access to like StatsCan or
Yeah.
what the equivalent is in the States. Like it's just a much better, faster research tool
Yeah.
and more accurate than I could ever do.
Well, and then you get a chance to verify as opposed to dig and find it. At least then
Yes.
you've got the first round of data that you can then double check on the key components of it. But
Hmm.
yeah.
I actually asked it further questions. I did basically ask the same question. Uh, like put your hat on as if you're Warren Buffett. What are my top 10 towns?
Yeah.
Like, put your hat on as if you're Ray Dalio. What are my top 10 towns? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then just looking for where do they always intersect. And then they always
Mm-hmm.
intersect generally. Like the same places keep coming up, coming up, coming up.
Yeah.
And it's actually funny when I was doing like heavy research, I was like thinking, Don would be so proud. There's so many fundamentals here. It's like check every box, and of
Yeah,
course
but
I do cash flow zone as a first sniff test as well for
yeah.
properties, right? If I don't get 8% gross rent yield, then just move on, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a starting point.
But I think there's a part of it, there's a couple things, and this goes back to where we were talking just a minute ago. But number one, you learn the system, you embrace the system, you apply it, and then you tweak it whatever you need to do in terms of how you set up your particular business model. Back to some of the other education, what we'll call education groups out there, is that generally they're local. And they're experts in that, but they're selling real estate. That is always the agenda that we, kind of have to pay attention to. It's like follow the money. And so is this education valuable? Is it proven? Is there a system? Blah, blah, blah. We see across the market that if you have an agenda called, I got this deal to sell, you take that system that you've learned and that you're
Hmm.
using and you just bend it a little bit. It's
Hmm.
like, when it's like those, early investors who find they think they've worked so hard to find the right deal, and then they start getting on their pro forma, and then they start making up stories about, well, yeah, but I could probably get another $100 a month for rent. They start, oh, and I could probably save a little on insurance, and the next thing you know, oh, look at this, it cash flows. Okay, hold on, settle down.
Yeah, they
Like,
cooked it.
let's
Yeah.
back those numbers down, and that's often what happens.
And that's the other thing great about Rain. Like it's again, like everyone was so friendly. Everyone was really happy to give you a second set of eyes. Same with the staff at Rain, right? You could post on the old My Rain space.
Well, there's a fundamental about that, and it's I in the coaching that I do, even with small business owners, is that culture, environment is so important. And so within REIN, when we talk about community, it's a community of like-minded individuals, but it's also a culture of support and it's a culture of collaboration. And over the years, to your point and your experience within it, is that there is support. There's a community of collaboration, like-minded individuals.
Mhm.
And so, for you, it was really important that that collaboration was there, that, people were friendly. And that's because if you were really in it and if you were part of the community, it was weird to walk outside that line, to hold your cards really close to your chest going, okay, that was a big mistake, but I'm not going to tell anybody about that mistake. I'll let them learn for themselves. Like that just was not generally an attitude that people had, because you're going, man, did I mess up here? I got to let people know, don't do that. So
Mhm.
it's a little different view of the world, but that culture is really created at the front of the room. It is the pointy end of the spear that drive that culture, and then people like yourself
Mhm.
and many longtime REIN members who really embraced the culture and then kind of lived it and shone a light on it. So, and it's an important part about any community, and we still take is a lot of pride in continuing that whole philosophy, if you
Mhm.
will. It's got to be the right environment, like-minded people, culture, and part of that culture is collaboration support.
Speaking of shining a spotlight, every meeting there was the section about what's behind the curtain. So I
Mhm.
think it's a wonderful reminder to everybody is that, like you said earlier as well, follow the money,
Mhm.
right? I don't think enough people were doing that in many of these investment decisions they made that have ended up horrific, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, what is behind the curtain? Understand how people make money and get paid, and go from there, right?
yeah.
Have some like diligence in all your relationships. And again, like
Oh,
much credit to Rain in that there was regular top presentations on how to qualify a quality partner in an investment or business co-venture.
well, we do, in our raising capital, programs, we just do so much diligence on that. But, what's behind the curtain, it's always the phrase, right? Let's lift the hood. Let's kind of look what's underneath there and what's behind the headlines, when we look at the economics and when we look at these headlines that are out there. A lot of people just read headlines, and sadly, the headlines are not a great representation often about what is even in the article. So if you read
Mhm.
the article, it's not even close to representing what the headline is. The headline is just clickbait. I mean, ultimately, that's what it is. So when we lift the hood and we look what's behind the curtain, it's like looking at the deals. Like if you looked at the deals of this most recent collapse of $144 million and the people behind it, anybody that would have really lifted the hood would have gone, okay, this doesn't make sense. How is this even sustainable? And
Mhm.
what happens if? Oh, what happens if interest rates go up? What happens if? Back to your point, Erwin, earlier on, is that you hadn't even heard of promissory notes. The challenge that we face in, I'm going to say Canada, but really in North America, is that where do we get yield? Where can we seek yield that we can kind of have some confidence in? We all know that the markets are, stock market, equity market is a little manipulated or a lot, depending who you want to listen to. It's very emotionally driven. We look at what's happening these days with, the top seven really driving the whole market, the rest of the market kind of down. So my point is that where can you put capital that you felt wasn't at risk, that you got yield, and you had something tangible to back it up called real estate. So then this secondary lending, because a lot of people were going to the bank for multiple properties. Bank says, no
Yeah.
way, I'm not lending. You're too high a risk. Got it. We know banks are a little bit anal about those kinds of things, but
Mhm.
so what do? We go to, private money, and private money, if you're an investor or if you're if you're writing the checks, there's good returns, but people forget that if you're getting a 14% interest payment, it's related to risk. Banks will lend you money, but they're going to charge you, the higher the risk, the more they're going to charge you on that rate. Here's the thing. If you're starting to go to private money, or if you're going to be a private money lender and you're getting 12, 10, 12, 14% or more, then you got to accept the fact that that comes with risk. And that's why you're getting 12 or 14%. I just want to shine a light on that. So it's not like as bad as these guys ran their business, obviously, and the risks that they put in place, riding that tide of everybody's a genius in a strong market, in a big cycle, then you got to take some responsibility for the fact that, did you look behind the curtain? Did you lift the hood?
Yeah.
Do you realize that if you're getting 14%, there's some risk with it? So
Yeah.
I'm not letting these guys off the hook in any way, shape, or form, but there is a component of it where, the investor or the lender that doesn't want to take responsibility, they want to blame. And I go, yeah, okay, maybe.
Yeah, I actually saw some of the materials, like the marketing material from the broker
Yeah.
that was brokering the mortgages, and the language was like fully endorse these borrowers. I'm like, holy cow.
Wow.
And I was thinking while you're talking as well, like how many people took the time to check if Timmins, Ontario would qualify under the Gold Mine Scorecard?
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess it didn't, because my first check was StatsCan, and the population actually shrunk over the last 5 years. So that does not pass. That does not check the box for a Gold Mine Scorecard.
So the marketing was misleading. I haven't looked at the marketing closely. I have looked at some of it, but not in any detail. So you're saying what your experience of seeing it is, it's a little misleading. Having said that,
it's saying a lot
still,
for that market and
yeah.
these investors.
Yeah.
And then
So you still got to do.
Here's the result.
But investors, what's interesting about this, or what is funny, is that people don't have a tendency to want to do their diligence. And I'll call myself out on this. So one of our trusted partners is Equiton, and I put some RSP capital into a couple of projects, and they sent me the OM.
Yeah.
And I go, oh shit, I don't want to read an OM, but I forced myself to at least have a cursory glance. Now, Equiton's got over $1 billion, AUM, and a great track record, and I know all the players involved, right? But here's me going, do I really want to read this OM?
It's so dry.
It's tough. It's dry. If I need something to get to sleep by, an OM is the answer.
My first step is still to stick it into ChatGPT and have it summarize it for me. Literally, like, I've done the prompt, like, you are my lawyer. Are there any concerns with this document? I am the investor, whatever. And what are your concerns with this document?
No, I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah,
we need to embrace technology.
At least give me a summary, and then I'll dig further from there.
Yeah. Give me the top 10 points.
Yeah, give me top 10 points. And are there any red flags? Like, I am your client. What should I be concerned with? And then, it gives you at least like the fresh grad generic advice, what you should be doing, what you should be looking out for.
Yeah.
So you've been through a lot. And actually, when you're talking about like your business was 41 years old, there's a saying among entrepreneurs is you don't have a successful business until it's gone through a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
You want to count how many cycles you've been through?
Well, I went into the workforce in full on in 1977, and so
I wasn't born yet.
So, I've been through, I think, 4. I've lost track, and some of them weren't. And keep in mind, some of them weren't full on recessions in terms of Canada, but when I was born and raised in Alberta, and so we went through a couple of big cycles, and then when our current prime minister's father introduced the national energy program, it shut Alberta down. I mean, it hit hard back in those days. So I've been through a number of them, and what can I say is that you start to realize that it's to have sustainability, you've got to be really cautious about what you do and how you do it. And have I done a great job? Probably not. But 40 years later, I've got a business. It's one of my businesses that it stands alone. It's a great asset. I've got a great team of people. What can I say? So I've been through lots. I've been through lots of as an absentee owner. I haven't had a key to my business. I haven't had a key to that business since 2006. And so I've been through some cycles with, being an absentee owner and even being outside the province and the city in terms of living there on a day-to-day basis. So, yeah, so you learn a lot through that process, hopefully.
For the listeners' benefit, how is the relationship between your business and your real estate portfolio? Because for many, like for example, REIN members, almost all of them had day jobs. So day
Mhm.
job was to save money. Savings were to provide down payments and capital for investments. Is that
Mhm.
something similar to your setup?
Yeah, when I started investing in real estate back in 2000, my business had come to a certain place where it was doing reasonably well. And when I was looking at some of what I would call them, the people that I admired were mostly entrepreneurs. And when I looked at the entrepreneurs and many of them far more successful than I was by a huge margin. But what I noticed that regardless of the millions they made in their businesses, every single one of them invested in real estate. And I went, oh, isn't that interesting? And so if I'm going to model myself after those that I admire and those that I think know what they're doing, I
Hmm.
got to learn about real estate.
Hmm.
And so when I looked at it, I realized that, and one of my business mentors said to me that he just said straight up, Patrick, you don't know if or when or how you're going to exit this business. As you sit here today. So when you look into the future, what is it that you're going to set yourself up for in whatever back then it was the conversation around retirement. And it was like, you need to look and allocate capital to an investment that you're going to build and grow over time that's going to pay you into the future. So not unlike somebody who has a job, I had exactly the same agenda, which was I didn't know back then that this business that I've got, this particular business we're talking about here, my retail business in Edmonton was going to continue to grow and go and pay me, even though I wasn't there. It was still early on. So for me, investing in real estate aside from my business was really a hedge to say, okay, well, how do I provide for my family in the future? How do I create that future income aside from my business? And for me, it's worked out very well.
How did you invest back then, and then compared to how do you invest today?
Well, the fundamental difference back then is I was growing a portfolio. At this point in my life, this phase of my life, I'm not looking at adding more to my portfolio, although that's not to say I wouldn't. Well, for example, you know, I've been a capital partner on a couple of different projects. As I just shared with you, I put some capital into Equiton because it's hands off. I'm not going into the trenches. I'm just not interested. I love the fact that I've got my existing portfolio. I've cleaned it up. I exited all joint venture partnerships over the past 4 years. And ultimately, my wife and I are the pointy end of the spear of our real estate portfolio. I manage that. I've got good property management. I pay attention to what's going on with the portfolio. I'm looking at exiting a couple of properties, but I'll just take that capital and put it over somewhere else within my real estate world. And so it's a different way of, I'm looking at it in this phase of my life of how do I increase cash flow? How do I, tighten up the operations if there is some room to tighten it up? And that's just the real difference. I'm not in acquisition mode like I was back in really from 2000 to about 2012. We were like full on. And at one point, between partners and we had, I don't know, 100 and I lost track, 140 doors. And I say 140 doors, 140 properties, which, were lots of duplexes, fourplexes, multifamily, light industrial. So now I'm thinned it right out and thinned it out being I have no more joint venture partners and it's just managing my existing portfolio.
All right, that's a mouthful. So Patrick, this is a podcast, and generally our audience is younger than us.
Generally, yeah.
Generally, what would you say? What would you say to the person who is growing their portfolio today? Say someone's like 25, 30 years old. Where should they be focusing their attention?
Well, first off, get started, but also get educated. What's happening right now, what we're seeing happen right now, Erwin, is that lots of confusion, lots of uncertainty. So people are actually sitting on the sidelines. In a boom cycle, I'll go back, I'll say it again. In a boom cycle, everybody's a genius because it seems like nothing but high tide. Everybody's riding this high tide. All tides rise on a all boats rise on a high tide. Ultimately, what we're in right now is not a boom cycle, although it's confusing. This is actually the time to get into looking at the market. This is the time to get the education, to sharpen your saw and get ready to cut wood, because there are so many great deals out there. And there's lots more to come in this particular cycle. So do you want to chase real estate in a boom cycle? Quite frankly, I don't.
Yeah.
But in a confusing, uncertain cycle, in a down cycle, that's where opportunities exist. So I encourage anybody who's younger, even if you don't have the down payment capital today, there's a phrase that we use. The more knowledge and education you have, the less time and money you need. And you know this one, Erwin, because you came to a point where you were out of money, but because you had the knowledge, because you had the education, capital became secondary. When you're first starting out, you don't have that knowledge, you don't have that education. You go, I have no money, I can't invest in real estate. Well, that's not true. And the reality of it is you can, if you have the knowledge, if you have the education, if you put a system and a process in place, it's totally possible to invest in real estate. And so to those younger individuals listening to the show, you got to get trusted education. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but that's what I got.
Where can someone sample a REIN event?
So great question. Thanks for asking that. If you go to info at REIN Canada, info at REIN Canada, you can reach out to the team there. You can go to reincanada.com. We have lots of, well, I say lots, we have a lot of, really free content that you can tap into to get a feel for what we do. There's opportunities to come to some free meetings so that you can get a real feel about what we're all about.
Fabulous. And then what's the split between in-person and online?
Well, right now we're primarily online and there's not a defined split. So we're working to we've done a number of live events. So there's not we haven't defined live events yet. It's still too kind of all over the map of what people want and what people don't want, to be honest with you. It's an interesting time. And because we don't sell real estate, we're not hyping events, a live event, come to this and get rich. It's, come to this and get education. It's like, I don't want to learn. It's an interesting dynamic, an interesting shift in this economy.
Yeah, you refuse to learn. You're putting yourself out at risk at like these folks who lent $144 million.
Exactly. And those are things shut people down. And there's another aspect to it, which is, there's so many talking heads on YouTube. There's so many events. There's so many experts. It really is an interesting time. And certainly over the years, when I look around the industry, first off, you realize how small Canada is when you really start to get into it. And now that we're so digital, the world has shrunk. Let's face it. When you look at Canada, 40 million people, and it's just such a small country. And then you bring that down to even how many people are investing in real estate. Well, it seems like the whole world is. It's not, and there's not that many that really play in this space relatively. It seems like there's a lot. There is a lot of talking heads out of the US that confuse people on YouTube or whatever other platforms that are out there. But when I look at the real players or those individuals that have done a good job, that have started to to withstand the test of time. Many of them are former REIN members. It's interesting is that the 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 most seemingly successful in terms of the space of education and selling deals are former REIN members who kind of cut their teeth on the education and the content that we provide.
And I'll just throw it there as well is that a lot of REIN members don't have massive social media profiles. We're
No,
generally like quiet, successful.
yeah,
Like
they're busy building it.
I was golfing with like Todor Yardanov and Jules
Yeah, yeah,
McKenzie in the summer.
yeah.
And I was like, God, guys, it's been a long time, and look how much money you guys have made.
Yeah,
But like, go find their social media profile. They're not even talking about real estate.
yeah. Well, they have a different agenda, right? They're building their own portfolios, their own businesses. Toter is a little bit more than Jules, but Jules is just chugging away, doing what he and Ange have done, and
Yeah.
they've built a great, great portfolio, and they're enjoying I guess, the spoils of their hard work.
So here's a random question: how do you guys feel like when you see this? Like, it was awesome for me to like have a reunion with like all these old REIN people. Shannon Murray was there too. Tahani was there. You know what I mean? Next time you're in town, we'll go play golf. But how do you feel looking back at all this?
Feel about what?
You guys ran the show that we were all part of,
Yeah.
and you see,
Well, there's a fundamental, and of course it's in hindsight, but a little bit of age wisdom, if you will. And there's all sorts of ways I can look at it, but ultimately I come back to what I've come to realize especially over about the past 5 years. Stephanie and I are really clear on what our purpose and our mission is. And I think we always were. We're just being more vocal about it. So as much as it's great to do business and to be able to bring value to people, and we try really hard to do that. And of course, it's still business, and it's still a competitive market, and it still gets watered down. And if I've worked closely with Patrick Bet-David team in the past, and he just wrote a book, Choose Your Enemies Wisely, and I look at all of that. So it's easy to go down a path of what we've created was and had a really big impact on an industry. I'll just leave it there. For Stephanie and I, my wife and I, we look back on it and go, wow, we made a difference in a lot of people's lives. That's part of our purpose, is to support people in being their greatest selves, living their best lives, creating a life by design. That's really what drives us, and one of the reasons that we get up in the morning, and one of the reasons that we do what we do. I mean, Stephanie is just literally coming back from China, working with athletes. She's done that for 25, 30 years. That's not a get rich business model. That's yes, I get paid, and yes, it's fun, but most importantly, I'm making a huge difference, and that lights me up. And so financially, there's all of the stresses of business that come with any business. But when we go back to what our purpose and what our mission is, and what we do with our coaching clients, and I haven't even talked to you about, I do men's groups. I'm in the middle of a shift men's group that we do, and coaching program, think tank. That's really what is driving us right now. So as much as we love the real estate education part of it, it's the difference that we make in people's lives by doing that. That's really what drives us.
I don't like telling people what to do, but you gotta have Kyle and Brian Pullis come to guest speak one of your guys' events.
I haven't seen Kyle for a long, long time. Brian and I will touch base every so often, but
yeah. Brian's probably at his Florida mansion right now. Kyle, it's nice outside, so he's probably driving around in his Ferrari.
Yeah.
Did you ever think?
Yeah, who'd have thought it? Well, they worked hard.
They worked hard. And man, they went to real estate for the REIN.
You know what? One of the things that I appreciate about Brian particularly was that early on, before he was just getting, his world of real estate started, and he didn't even know if that was the thing to do. But he's always been really great. He worked with Stephanie, and he was always great at giving her credit for that, creating that fork in the road moment for him, opening up this conversation that he got to see it, and he chose a fork in the road. And that fork in the road was towards the business of investing in real estate. And he went on to do an exceptionally good job of that.
Yeah, they're doing all right. I don't even know how many doors they have under management, and it's a proper
Yeah.
REIT too.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not, this ain't no fake it till you make it. This is as legitimate, regulated by Securities Commission as you can get.
Yeah.
For the listener who's looking to grow their portfolio, what markets should they be looking into? Any particular strategies? Rent to own, like secondary mortgages? What is the flavor of the month? Not the flavor of the month.
Well, I think, Erwin, first off, we want to avoid flavor of the month. Part of one of the fundamental mistakes that people make is that they want to invest in their own backyard and they'll force the river. So in other words,
yeah,
they'll go, I just got to find it in my backyard. Or they say, I can invest because there's no real estate here to me. Okay. So let's just kind of give a context for that. First and foremost, you've heard it a million times. We want to make our money work harder for us than we work for our money, which means our job as real estate investors is to find markets that we see they have an economic future. So in other words, if you're investing in your backyard and unemployment's rising, you're not seeing industry come into it, why would you want to?
yeah. Or
So
your
you have to
government
look
hates
out.
your guts, like mine.
Yeah. So you have to look at markets that are strong. It's interesting that right now, so we've been talking about Calgary for about 5 years. The last event we did in Calgary was literally a week, maybe, yeah, a week. I want to say it's a week before the COVID lockdown. So March 7th, I think, was our last weekend. It was an acre weekend. But we had been talking about Calgary and where it was heading. And then after the lockdowns, and we could see by the middle of 2020, last quarter of 2020, we just couldn't say loud enough, get into Calgary. It's going to
It's been on
go crazy.
fire. Yeah.
Yes, as an investor. So we look at that market. So why did we keep pounding that drum? Because we could see where it was going based on what was happening and unfolding economically. And so although it seemed like all boats rise on a high tide, and it looked like right across the country, everything was a high tide. Got it. But we weren't saying invest anywhere. Never were we saying just go. It was look at the market. What are the economic fundamentals that drive that market? My point is this. The one thing that it did do, and I'm going to put a cautionary note on Calgary, you can bring me back to that. The one thing it did was it shrunk the world. So in other words, the digital world, hang on, we'll wait for my dogs to quit barking or I'll kick them out.
Can you see them?
Hold on, let me kick these guys out. Sorry to interrupt this. I hope you can edit this out. Can you edit this out?
No worries.
Okay, hang on. Okay, I'm back.
No worries. I'll clap us back in. You're good?
Yeah.
All right.
So the thing that we have
to
so the thing that we have to consider in all of this is that the world got really small given what happens on Zoom. This was not really considered a possibility as little as 4 years ago. And when the world got really small, it opened up the door of opportunity for investors to get outside of their backyard and do it with some clarity, with some power, with some confidence, because I could now look at a property in Calgary and literally have a conversation, go through a tour, a virtual tour, like in real time. Somebody's got their phone, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
And so it opened up the whole door of opportunity of looking at deals and, oh, okay, I can actually see this property. For the less experienced or sophisticated investors, it's pretty tough to write a check and invest in a property that you either haven't been in or that you've touched and feel it kind of thing. But when you look at technology and what that opened up the door, it took people outside of their own backyard, which was a great opportunity for those who had the wherewithal and actually the knowledge and education, the team to actually invest outside their province. But that was our job. Look at where the future of real estate would go based on the economic fundamentals. Now, we could see that happening in Alberta. I'm still a big fan of Alberta to this day. They call me Mr. Alberta. It's not to say that there isn't great opportunities in Ontario as an example. But when you look at what's happening, you have to be very, very diligent in what part or what cities that you're investing in Ontario. And it's a much bigger province, let's face it.
And what
Calgary's a
strategy
little
as well.
easier to, and I used to be and I was a big fan of, I often said, historically, Edmonton follows Calgary. Now, I was born and raised in Edmonton, but I'm looking at what's happening today, and I'm looking at what's going on in Calgary, and I'm looking at what's happening in Edmonton. And I'm going, yeah, I'm not convinced about Edmonton. I would look at and you know what it's driven by? Politics. And when we look at Edmonton right now, total orange, total NDP, that's a concern for me.
Edmonton is?
100%. I know.
You have an NDP party in Edmonton?
Yeah, I know. And I mean, strong. Every riding in Edmonton voted NDP. Now, that's got a lot to do with demographic and the shift, and, it's just a cycle. But my point is this, is that politics are an influencer, and they're short, which is to say they're shorter term, but they do have an impact on the real estate market. When I look at Edmonton economically, pretty good, still pretty strong, but I'm worried about some of the initiatives that they're taking. So I put a huge guard on Edmonton, and I'm going, yeah, I'm not all in on Edmonton. And by the way, they just announced 15-minute cities, being an official 15-minute city. So in other words, I don't remember what it was. It was like a ridiculous amount of districts that are going to be based on a 15-minute initiative. Now, forget about all of the stories around what a 15-minute city is. The point is, we don't know. We don't know what a 15-minute city really is. And if you phone the city of Edmonton, which I've done, they're not 100% clear. It's a great idea. It's going to be awesome. You won't even believe how cool it's going to be. Okay, but can we get into a little bit more about infrastructure and costs and what happens if I have to leave my district because my job is in another district? Oh yeah, you're just going to have to pay. Oh, well, what does that mean? Right? So there's so many unknowns about it, controversy aside, whether you believe in 15-minute cities conceptually or not. Okay, well, it's one thing to believe in something conceptually, but if you lift the hood, what's behind the curtain? Well, as a real estate investor, politics are an influencer, but this is long term. So I'm really cautious about Edmonton right now. And so I'll just leave it at that for now. That's kind of where I'm looking at right now with Edmonton, but surrounding area, I'm going, okay, you look at the smaller centers around Edmonton and other cities in Alberta, I'm very bullish.
Yeah, the former leader of the NDP is our mayor in Hamilton.
Yeah.
And we just had it. They just passed the rent eviction law.
Yeah.
Did you ever read about that one? How restrictive it is?
I haven't looked at the details of it. I've heard it and heard many people talk about it at a high level, but I haven't dug under the hood on that one.
It comes down to, say you have a legitimate reason that people cannot live in the property, right? Say the roof leaked badly.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're going to have mold and whatnot, right? So people have to leave. So you provide your notice to the tenant, you have to leave while we renovate. And now based on this new Hamilton bylaw, the onus will be on the landlord to find that tenant that's being displaced and a very similar unit at the same price. In a world where our vacancy rate is less than 1%.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck.
I mean, who does that make sense to? Politicians. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm choosing to get out. so hopefully no one blames me for getting out.
Well, here's the thing about it, Erwin, is that you're a business guy. You're a real estate investor. And we create a thesis for our business decisions. And then we say, okay, based on what I believe, based on my research, this is what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like you're telling somebody what to do. You're saying, this is what I'm doing. And somebody may have a totally different look at it. You see it as this is not a headwind I want to face. And you have somebody else that goes, it's in these headwinds that I want to get in. I think there's opportunity. So whatever thesis you go with, the point is that you've created one. you have a thesis around your business model and you're making a decision. That's perfect.
I would like to say mine's a bit more complicated than most and well thought out of, the well thought
Right.
out versus like,
Right.
Timmins, Ontario. Yeah, it's cheap. Let's go. Let's buy
Well,
200 houses.
and I'm going to circle back to the Calgary conversation because I know that you have a lot of Ontario listeners,
Mhm.
and
And a lot
what's
of people are going to Alberta.
so many people are going to Alberta, and I'm
BC
going,
people too.
so many investors going to Alberta and primarily Calgary, and they're looking at it. It's cheap, so they look at the price of a condo there and they go, "Gosh, for this price, give me three." I am here, and I've said this. There is no secret about my view of condos in Alberta. I'm saying in Edmonton, do not buy a condo to invest in. Full stop. I'll debate that all day long. I'm telling you, do not buy a condo in Edmonton as an investment. You want to live in one? Blow your brains out. But if you don't know, you better know really, really well what you're doing if you're going to invest in a condo in Edmonton. I'm just saying, don't do it. The upside's not worth it. The risk's not worth it. Don't do it. Calgary, on the other hand, different demographic, different dynamic, but I'm saying it's the same issue with the condo market in Calgary. Now, having said that, there are some opportunities in Calgary if you know exactly the street that they're being built on and you understand that market. And if you're not dealing with a very, very experienced realtor who's an investor themselves, who know that market, who speak investor, who know exactly what they're doing, you're gonna be hearing stories in the next 2 years, 3 years of things gone wrong with condo investors in Calgary because they're in for the wrong reasons. They're out of province. They don't understand the demographic. They don't understand the dynamic. And I think a lot of people are going to not be liking life in a couple of years.
So I'm really inexperienced with Alberta, but I remember the last time I was in Calgary, probably 5 years ago, something like that.
Mhm.
I remember being downtown going for dinner on a Friday night, and you know where I'm going. It was a ghost town. So why would someone want to live in a downtown condo, as an example? It doesn't seem to like Calgary's beautiful. Like part of the reason why I think so many people from so many people from Ontario and BC have moved to Calgary is because the lifestyle is wonderful.
Mhm.
And then from my experience, people generally live in the suburbs, closer to
Yeah.
where work, like on their way to Canmore, for example,
Mhm.
right? Because that's the lifestyle decision they're making because that's where all the beauty is. Yeah.
Yeah.
You tell me though. You know this better than I do.
But I don't think there's a one answer to any of that, Erwin. I think that when you get into Calgary and you look at downtown, it's, everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, many like to live in downtown because of the lifestyle. There's a walkability. Calgary's a pretty progressive downtown. You can't compare it to Edmonton, which is not. They try hard and they're really trying, but they've just not been able to attract, long. Yeah, it's just not a great lifestyle per se as a
Hmm.
long term, what we would say compared to Toronto or Vancouver. I mean, what do you like about living? I lived downtown Vancouver. And we lived in the Shangri-La, we were on the 49th floor. It was a cool lifestyle. We walked everywhere, we did everything. It's
Hmm.
also Vancouver weather, which allowed you to do that a little bit easier. Toronto, same vibration. It's like good energy. It's really kind of a
Hmm.
funky lifestyle if that's what you want. Calgary, not Toronto or Vancouver, although they're trying and they're seem to be doing not a bad job. Edmonton, they're not even in the conversation. So the point is that when you look at Calgary, that's why people there. I can live, I can work, and to your point, it's a quick trip to the mountains. I mean, let's face it, Calgary's pretty great that way. Banff.
I'm pretty sure it's almost everyone's first choice if you're going to leave Ontario or BC. Like, I'm happy to debate anyone else what their top choice would be, top three choices.
Well, you hear mostly about Calgary, but that's not to say there's a lot of people heading into Alberta in general, but Edmonton is also becoming a place that we're starting to see an uptick. And do you know why? Affordability. Let's go back as investment aside, Erwin, is why are people moving to Alberta? Well, affordability. Certainly we look at the price of housing and it seems like it's on sale compared to Ontario, for example, or British Columbia. Then you have affordability. I happen to live in two provinces. Like I spend a lot of time in British Columbia, but I also have a secondary residence and a business in Alberta. And so when I look at British Columbia and I go to Alberta, it's like going to a factory outlet. That's how it feels to me. Everything is on sale. But then on top of that, we don't have the additional sales tax. And so number one, the cost of gas, buck and a quarter, buck 20 for fuel in Edmonton. I'm a buck 69 on a good day here in British Columbia. So then you look at the cost of food. I would say, on my own experience, food is as much as 30% cheaper in Alberta than it is in British Columbia. Now I'm just giving comparisons. You live in Ontario, but my point is this: is that affordability. But then on top of it, the tax consequences. Then you've got on top of that the fact that your average incomes in Alberta is still the highest in the country. So your disposable income is far greater in Alberta. Now, if you're in Alberta and you're listening to this, you're going, Francey, you're crazy, dude. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm telling you, I do know what I'm talking about. And so if you're in it, you don't see it until you get out of it and start to experience it outside of that province. And then on top of it, I got to say, Danielle Smith is a rock star in terms of being a premier. I think she's doing and going the right direction. Like any politician, there's some things that might be debatable, but I love her leadership. And that's what people are looking for, is leadership. So they're going to Alberta for that.
They're definitely fighting for the rights of Albertans, which I don't think anyone will ever complain about while they're as an Albertan. So what are what kind of strategies work in Alberta? Let's start from a beginner's perspective. Say if someone's like, what should their first property be in Alberta as an investment?
Yeah, it goes back to a couple things, which is what's your plan? So when you look at an economy, we often say there's no bad economies. There's just the wrong tactic and strategy in any given economy. So, we always go back to the kind of, what are you working backwards from? And this is where things get confusing, Erwin, and you know this. How much cash flow do you live on from your portfolio? The short answer is not a lot, maybe none, right? So, but the sales pitch for the gurus on YouTube or on stage is, buy 10 properties. They're going to cash flow $1,000 a month or $500 a month. And, that's like $5,000 a month in your jeans, which we know is bullshit. So the point is that what is it that you're investing for? Many buy into that and they're saying, well, I want to, I'm trying to create cash flow. So are you saying that you need active income today? Yes, that's what I'm saying. Okay, well, buy and hold is not a great strategy if you're looking for active income today. You got to look at a different strategy, whether that's BRRRR or fix and flip, rent to own. That'll put money in your pocket today. Assignments, wholesaling, like, I don't mean assignments pre-built, I mean wholesaling and finding deals, bird dogging, getting and working with other investors who are looking for deals. Like, there's all sorts of way to do that. But here's your goal. I need income today. I want to build an additional side hustle, if you will, today. Okay, well, that's going to change the strategy that you use. However, you got a job, you got a good job, it's sustainable, you're making okay dough. I don't need some cash flow today, although it'd be nice. I'm not depending on it. It's really for future, future security, certainty, financial freedom. Those are all words that people have. When I say, why are you doing this? They're going, well, I want security, or I want certainty, or I want financial freedom. Okay, well, when? In the future. Like, I started investing in real estate for my future. I didn't need income today. At the time, I didn't need active income. So that's the first question that any new investor needs to ask themselves. What is it that I need and what is it I'm trying to achieve? And that's going to dictate the strategy that I use.
I find for my own audience, so at least, sorry, my own clients and also the people that were in the room at REIN, many of them were just perfectly fine in their careers. They didn't need money today necessarily. They were more interested in cash flow for potential to retire somebody.
Yeah.
But the big thing about cash flow is just to keep you safe, right? You positive cash flow, you can always survive.
Yeah.
What should that person invest in? The person who's just investing for the tomorrow, like, for a comfortable retirement 20 years from now.
Well, this goes back to the very bare bones of investing, which is buy and hold. Find a property. These days would have to be at least a duplex, and that cash flows in a location that you can see the future, whether that be considering transportation changes or transit changes, right? when you look into the future of that neighborhood, you go, no, this is a growing neighborhood. So you go in there, you work with an investor focused realtor, and you find those deals and you do the math on what is going to cash flow, who's my demographic. So in other words, who's my client? And you cater to that client, and then you treat it like a business, which means you market it well, you operate it well, you manage it well, you're looking at always the numbers to make sure that you've got cash flow, and away you go. You then hold that asset. It's going to gain some appreciation. Part of your strategy might be, oh, I'm going to fix it up a little bit, force some appreciation into it.
Mhm.
And then I'm just going to let it ride. I'm going to make sure that I have a tenant in there every month, and I'm just going to chug away, buy down that mortgage, build cash reserves to go through the cycles and weather the storms that will occur over a period of time. And then I'm going to enjoy the fruits of my labor in 15, 20 years.
One thing that I really was appreciated about REIN was how their research was pointing towards what drives prices. So, for example, the Red Hill Valley Parkway in Hamilton was identified by REIN a long time ago that it would drive prices. It improved, for those who aren't familiar, it's okay. It's just kind of like a highway that connects the Hamilton Mountain and the airport to the QEW.
Mhm.
And then for someone to observe the growth that happened afterwards, after that highway was created, without that highway, we wouldn't see things like Amazon opened up their largest, most state of the art distribution facility is on Hamilton Mountain, and I don't think it would be there without that highway. And there's all tons of other job stories related that REIN had identified. Like this business park will boom because of this highway connection being here. And I think that's kind of lost on a lot of people, at like YouTube influencers and whatnot. There's only so much they can teach on the YouTube, and again, people have lost. The infrastructure improvements are massive because infrastructure improvements bring you jobs, and it's jobs that bring population growth. Population growth drives rents and prices. Was there a question in there?
Well, no, I think there's a statement in there, and you make a really great point through it all, Erwin, which is to say that when we look at the changes, geographic changes of any particular region, it opens up. So, and listeners, if you think about it, all of a sudden this neighborhood pops up, or all of a sudden you can get somewhere quicker. Well, what happened? Well, there was ring roads built, there was highways built,
Yeah.
there was access. I'll use
LRT,
Peterborough.
GO
I'll
train.
use
Yeah.
LRT, right? Rapid transit. So you look at what the impact of Barrie was when, you look at all these transportation changes, but what it meant was access. So I'll use an example. This was a conversation I had, I think 5 years ago. And so JG, who's, one of my good friends and owns a development company and a property management company, does some really cool things in Peterborough. I went out to visit him in Peterborough, and I'm looking at Peterborough, and I'm looking at, I think it's 407 that changed the game. I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at how quickly you can get from one edge of Toronto to Peterborough, relatively speaking, it's like it opened up a whole doorway of opportunity. And I said to JG at the time, I go, dude, you're not buying enough real estate in this town, because I'm telling you right now, when I look around as an outsider looking in, Peterborough's got a really big upside. And, it was interesting that he was in it, very experienced, but he wasn't seeing it through the same set of eyes as I was seeing it.
Mhm.
And I'm looking at affordability and just based on affordability relative to Toronto, and the fact that all of a sudden I can get from one to the other in an hour or less. I'm going, this is gold, dude. People are going to be coming here, and sure enough, that's exactly what's been happening.
Peterborough is a great lifestyle town as well with the Trent River. It's quite
Love
scenic.
Peterborough. Yeah, all those towns.
Especially in the context of
But the
Ontario, it's very
point,
scenic.
is that in all of this, Erwin, is that was very foreseeable because of, in this case, a transportation change, and it's like all of a sudden accessibility and travel time. People don't look at miles so much or kilometers so much anymore. They look at time. And all of a sudden the time of travel got changed, and then affordability and lifestyle, I'm in. And so that's what drove that particular market and continues to.
And REIN was dropping a report every year to members on infrastructure improvements, so
Yes.
in different markets. We always got one in Ontario. I know you did. I believe you did them for Edmonton and Calgary all the time as well. I'm sure you did
Did
one
them
for
all.
BC. Yeah.
Yeah, we did one a couple of years ago, which we got to upgrade or update again. But really the transportation change that is impacting the world and impacting Canada is 5G. Like literally billions of dollars by Bell, by Shaw, TELUS, whatever configurations they are
Yeah.
these days of
Rogers.
who
Yeah.
bought
Yeah.
who. But ultimately, the technology continues to shrink the world. And because of that, it changed the dynamic of work from home. And will that continue? Yes. Is it going to be as dramatic? Of course not. And we're already seeing that. But you're going to have a continued work from home cohort that aren't going back to the office. They're not going back to commuting. And even if that's only 25% of the work from home population that we had in, let's say, 2021, it's still a meaningful number that's going to
That's
impact real
enormous.
estate.
Yeah. Yeah. People need to compare what it is like today versus that pre-pandemic. It's totally different.
Yeah.
So Patrick, we're running out of time, so I can't let you go without at least asking about what is REIN's research saying about America, about the landlord-friendly states of the USA.
Well, I think that, so I think there's a couple things around the US is there's a lot of capital going south. I think like Canada, you have to consider what regions you're going into right now. Uh, Kind of any of, the Republican states are more popular. When you look at what's happening in Florida or, for example, Texas, good markets,
Love
and there's a
Texas.
reason for that, right? There's another aspect to it that I know some investors who are in really kind of out of flavor markets in the US. And so it's all to say this, that when you look at the gold mine scorecard, when you look at why you invest in a market, you just do the research. And when you start to see what is the economic upside of a given region and what's driving that change, you look at jobs, you look at GDP growth, you look at housing demand. In other words, are people coming and getting jobs and then needing a place to live? If you're going to be a rental housing provider, get out of the headlines that are speaking to retail and end users and just look at the map and say, wow, this is an up and coming center. People are going to want to move here. Why? Well, number one, they like the politics. Number two, they like the lifestyle. Oh, it's affordable. Isn't that interesting? And I can work.
Mhm.
So, I mean, those
And less
components
taxes.
alone are going to drive real estate. And oh, by the way, have they ever got some big infrastructure projects on the go?
Yeah,
Not just
huge.
political promises, they're actually got infrastructure projects on the
Mhm.
go. And whether that be highways or LRT or hospitals, those are big drivers of an economy. So those are things that you're looking for. And whether it's Canada or the US just, it's a far bigger country. I mean, 380 million people. So
Yeah.
there's more opportunity in the US than there is in Canada right now. And let's face it, Canada has taken some big hits politically, and it's going to take some time for that to change.
Yeah, Texas population is 31 million.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Texas and California. Look at California. I mean, I wouldn't live in California, but having said that,
I don't want my car
Texas, on the
broken
other
into.
hand, yeah,
And for anyone who's curious, just really easy prompt for ChatGPT or for Alberta, for Ontario, whatever. What based on economic fundamentals? Type this into ChatGPT. Based on economic fundamentals, give me the top 10 towns for whatever area you want,
yeah.
right? And but preferably use the gold mine scorecard. I'll have a link to it in the show notes. Patrick, any kind of final thoughts? I always like to give my guests the chance to say whatever they have to say without me leading them anywhere.
Well, I think there's a couple of things, Erwin, which is this is a very uncertain, confusing time. We know that. We've stated that. It's a very emotional time. And we are in a place of lots of divisiveness, lots of polarity, lots of global macro issues. We want to be able to take responsibility and have sustainability financially as we go forward. Real estate still works, but you have to take the emotion out of it. Look at the data. Look at, we've spent a lot of time talking about the economic fundamentals because that's what you need to look at. And so as you grow your future wealth, and make decisions on real estate, look at the data and take the emotion out of it, and you'll do well. And of course, that also means getting the education and make sure you understand the source of that education. Follow the money.
Follow the money.
What's behind.
What's behind the curtain?
Yeah.
Right.
All those things.
Ask whoever you're going to invest in to open their kimono.
Exactly.
Patrick, one last time, where can people get more information on REIN, the real estate
The
investment
best
network?
place to go, raincanada.com is the website. But Tina loves getting emails at info@raincanada.com, info@REINcanada.com. She will look after you. That's her calling. She loves it.
I miss Tina. I'll drop her an email too.
Yeah.
Patrick, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, it's been too long. I don't know if you spend enough time like social media. No, not enough time, but I spend too much time on social media. And you would be surprised how many times people's comments are like, "We need REIN. We need to go back to Acre. People need to figure out their cash flow again." Like, and all these people that went through graduate from REIN. And they're saying like, "Oh, if only these people went through REIN, they would be okay."
Well, I'll tell you what, you and your team organize it. I'll bring the team, show up, we'll deliver it.
Fantastic. It'll be on the golf course though.
There's a deal for you.
Thanks again, Patrick. Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to invest in real estate from scratch, my team teaches beginners how to use the #1 investment strategy that I personally use in a virtual free training class every month. Go to investortraining.ca/YouTube to register for our next class. The link's also in the description as well. I publish at least 2 to 3 videos a week here, so subscribe if you want to keep learning from seasoned investors like myself and my guests. And if you're just starting out, feel free to ask questions and comment below, and I do the best to answer each of those comments and questions myself. Again, if you're ready to learn the nitty-gritty about real estate investing from a professional investor, register for our next virtual class. That's at investortraining.ca/YouTube. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next video.